Hello and welcome. Today is the day after Christmas Day. In the West we call Boxing Day. It is here also Poya Day, the full moon of December. And this is what we call in the Pali language the Uposita, albeit the Uposita in Thailand and the rest of the world is actually tomorrow, the 27th, not the 26th, because that is a full moon. Here in Sri Lanka, they often move Poya Day slightly to coincide with other holidays when it's practical to do so. And there's nothing wrong with that. The important thing is that Poya Day, the full moon at least, once a month, is very strictly observed here in Sri Lanka and is a national holiday. So therefore, that is why it's moved a little sometimes. These dates, these times, these names, these occasions are simply convention. It is lovely to sit outside and stay up all night in the full moon with the benefit of its light. But in Buddhism, in this tradition, there is nothing particularly considered magical, powerful, or dare I say it, spiritual about that. However, we all have our own understandings of the power of this. Of course, tides, huge volumes, bodies of water across the planet are moved by the moon, and our bodies are a very high percentage of water. So I'm not discounting any theories behind the significance and the power of full moon, new moon, the dark moon, or these specific moon related lunar observances. But for convention's sake, we use the moon as our calendar, as monks, as also we use the sun as our clock, as monks. Some of us living alone, out in the wilds, not really out in the wilds, as you've seen, I'm close to a town, a village, and I'm living in a little house, a little kuti, a small place, and within civilization. This is a very small island in relation to other countries where I've stayed, and you don't have to go very far to see all of those alternatives. There is jungle, there are rivers, there are waterfalls, there are beach places, there are busy places, cities, there are small, tiny, rural villages and communities, and even tribes and deep jungles, all within this small island. This is why it's such a wonderful and marvellous and beautiful place to stay. And also, being as a Buddhist country, be very so well looked after. Now, I have no structure for what I'm talking about today. Forgive me, I've sat down and not also taken much time to see what's going on around me, but being this day, the day after the holiday, because yesterday here was also a national holiday. They use Christmas as that, a bank holiday as we'd call it in the West, and a national holiday. So many people have had a very long weekend, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and now Tuesday, much like people in the West. So they've probably used the opportunity to go to see their relatives and, catch up and do all of these nice family things. And today there's quite a few people on the beach. When I say quite a few, this isn't really the tourist part of the beach, so it's a few people surfing. So if you hear some different noises or maybe see some different things going on behind me, that's what's happening here. And that reminded me of, Boxing Day now 19 years ago in 2004. So next year, this time we'll be remembering the 20th anniversary of the Asian tsunami in this very region, which was here not so badly affected, but badly affected, and only a very short distance south, many disasters that you can read and watch all about, which took everybody in the world by surprise. There's 1 minute they're all playing on the beach like these lovely people in front of me now, on a Boxing Day morning, just like this, having had some holiday and time to rest, and then the waves get a little choppy and the water comes in, and I've listened and heard to some local people here, their first-hand accounts of this event, having travelled a little further south and been to some places which were more badly affected, and they obviously remember it very well. It was a very unusual phenomena. The sea came up very high, then it retreated and went a long, long way, so much so that here on this beach, much further up the island, there were fish just laying on the sand. And this is a local fisherman's part of the beach, and they were running out, picking up the fish and just putting them in their baskets. And before they could really get a chance to know what's going on, not having the news so readily available in these parts of the world, even today, for instance, I wouldn't know if something was going on like that because I haven't looked at news. I don't watch the news or look at the news. I did listen to the King of England's speech yesterday, because he is the head of the Church of England, the country where I come from, plus the head, figuratively, of my country. So I noticed it came up on my YouTube, and I was setting it for the morning chanting and thought, I should listen to King Charles's speech, which was very nice. But yes, 20 years ago now, or nearly 19 years ago now, then of course the sea came very quickly back in, and big waves, and it decimated many coastlines throughout this whole region of Asia, Thailand being particularly badly affected, the south of this island, and even the opposite coast, this coast, the west coast, because of the way this phenomena of waves works, was very badly affected. And they remember it well, and many people died. There are memorials around and things like this of such a disaster. Also, I've researched a little on some of the history here of this country, as I had the opportunity to do so a week or so back, and I don't understand it at all, but in terms of the political, in its political sense, but they have struggled through many years of some politically orientated and nationality orientated friction and difficulties, and many lives have been lost, as is going on just at the moment and goes on throughout the world continuously. There's not a time in history when there hasn't been warring and fighting, but now they are in a very nice state of peace and harmony from what I can see. I'm sure there's political differences, as there are everywhere, but again, many lives were lost over a period of 30, 40 years of battling, and all of these lives that are lost come to mind on these significant occasions, whether they're to do with the calendar, the Gregorian calendar, the calendar of the West, for instance, Christmas Day, Easter days, or the holidays, our birthdays. We remember those that are no longer celebrating this occasion with us. It's a marker point. Many people I know died last year, and a friend of mine contacted me and said, it's been a year, hasn't it? A terrible year, people dying. And I agreed, but I had to remind him that it's actually no different to the previous year, where just as many people that we knew, he's of the same age as me, and when you get to this age, more people you know, friends and family, die because you're older. This is just nature. And I reminded him it's actually no more than last year. And yes, we go to the next stage. This is Christmas for people who use that as a marker point, as another time to remember those we've lost in that year and maybe previous years, especially if it was around that significant date. But even if not, we use it as a time to recall. Now here, Poya Day, Uposita, which they really only celebrate the full moon one to its full by it being a holiday, and all of the families go to the temple to do just this very thing of sharing merits with past ones, as well as on the anniversaries of those individuals' deaths. Often on these Uposita days they do that also. So yesterday being Christmas Day, a lot of the shops were closed, and not all of the people were out when I went on Pindapat to collect my food in the morning. The regular, usual people were there. So I got fed, of course, and just didn't have so much surplus. But then there wasn't really anyone around for the surplus to be distributed by or to. There were a few people, so I went for a little walk and found whom Gamini, my helper, Kapia, normally finds, and my next door neighbours, to give them some food. And I had my bit. And I had also an invitation, which I didn't expect to be a lunch invitation, because I'm declining the lunch invitations because I find it takes too much of the day, when I think it's better that I've eaten, had my meal, which doesn't take very long at all, at 9 a.m, the usual time. Then I'm happy to go to people's houses to do whatever they wish, which is usually this remembering of our dead relatives. What's the name? What do we call it? Punya? I've forgotten the name, the official Pali name for this activity. But it involves, you have a little Buddha puja with the lighting of incense, candles, and the usual chanting, and then they give dana, they give offerings to the monks. So this can be robes, it can be a arta carrier, which is the 8 requisites, it can be food, it can be medicines, all of the usual requisites that are offered to the Sangha, or if you're just alone, as I am, to a monk, they're offered to you, and you dedicate their offering, their punya, which is goodness, just call it goodness, or it's often translated as merits, but I'm not sure merits has a very clear understanding for most people. We may think of school or Boy Scouts or Girl Guides, they had merits, I think, merit points, I don't know, for its goodness. But dedicating this goodness to the deceased that you know, your deceased loved ones who have departed. Dates that have been coming at me of 26 years, 34 years, and I'm thinking it's amazing, it's marvellous how they remember this anniversary for so many years. I really fail to remember my own close family members' death anniversaries a year or so later without it, if it's not in my diary, which I don't have a diary. I do have to be reminded, or look at, when I say I don't have a diary, there's one on my phone obviously, and only when I'm looking to see when the actual Uposita date is or something like this, I'll say, oh, so and so died this time of the year, because I did make a note of it or something, Google did it, I don't know how it works, but it's there, but not necessarily in my memory. So I really admire these people's respect to their deceased relatives, to have this continually remembered from people who've lost parents as young children, the date ingrained in their mind, when they will religiously, as I can say, go to the temple and do this sharing of merits activity. And I've been very fortunate and blessed that they've asked me to their houses to do this, and for lunch and all of the Sangha Dana and all of this. So I found a way of politely turning away the lunch bit but going to the house. And yesterday I didn't have quite so much to eat, because I thought I still want to give as much away as possible, so I just had the bare minimum. But I went to this house for this punya karma chanting thing to do, and I was still a little bit hungry, I'll be honest with you. And for other reasons, I've been doing some fasting for some blood tests. That's a whole other story, which I oughtn't to go into here. There's absolutely nothing wrong with me. I'm very healthy, although the doctor was of a different opinion. I think he just saw monk, they're the guys who just sit around and don't do anything and eat a lot. Well, he doesn't know me, and I'm not saying that, but I think he made that assumption because he did make some recommendations which were quite wrong, really, considering my lifestyle. They weren't wrong. They weren't based on my actual lifestyle. He doesn't know how monks from the tradition I've been brought up in, how we live on this one meal a day. I couldn't explain it, and he couldn't understand that. So the fasting times and everything apart the conversation was quite difficult. But he isn't the doctor that I'm normally seeing. It was just a new doctor, general member of staff in a local hospital where I was getting some blood tests. Anyway, as a result of these tests, I was about to die, so he gave me some medication which if I had taken, I would have died. So fortunately I didn't take them. I did my own tests at home every few hours, fasting, not fasting, everything in between, every variation on that. Took professional advice, as everybody should always do, medical professional advice, and nothing wrong with me. I'm fine and ready for my little bit of repair work to be done in the new year. So I was a little hungry, and I went to the house, and it was very beautiful, lovely place in a beautiful situation, and the family were there, and they greet you so devotionally, and there's this lovely foot bathing exercise and with the little special leaves in the water, and you go in. I bowed to their Buddha shrine, Rupa statue, as I do when I go into a room, and I asked them what they'd like me to do, what's their order, what's their program of events on such an occasion. And they had some notes, they had some of the things they do written down. But it's no different to what I do, but it's slightly different in different countries. So the order. Fortunately, the words, I kind of know the words, I just don't know when to say them. So this put the order to things, and it went very beautifully. But before that, they offered me food, and they wanted to offer food. I said, just please, you can go ahead and offer food, Dana. This is no problem at all. But I said, I must apologize in advance. I have already eaten, and I wasn't expecting lunch. And they understood, and they knew that. And they said, yes, but we'd like to offer you something. So I didn't have my pindapat, but they offered me some food. It was the most delicious looking food that they offered me. I thought, well, how can I resist? So I had 2 meals. So it was Christmas Day, so I did eat well, like all of you. I had a huge Christmas feast. Not only did I have my one meal, still this is well before 12 o'clock. I asked the time, it was 11:35, and I was finished well before 12. I had some very beautiful Sri Lankan home cooked, it's always home cooked, but just made there, especially for me, beautiful, lovely food. Which I enjoyed. And then we had this very lovely ceremony remembering their deceased relatives. And a lady who was there also remembered that it was Poya Day today. So she asked if she could come to my house, my kuti, our little temple, if we could dare call it that. Google Maps does. Anyway, this today being Poya Day, to remember her mother's death 34 years ago or something like that. I said, of course, you're very welcome to. So again this morning they all came, and this wasn't before. Another whole family had come this morning with offerings of Sangha Dana. So I had to get on the phone this morning, not to make a phone call, but just to send a message to my teacher in India. And this brings me on to another subject. I've segued this without planning. About exactly this procedure. What do I do? What do I say? Because I've only done this in a Sangha environment with the rest of my Sangha around me, and it's slightly different when you're on your own, and it's also slightly different depending on what's being offered. So I wanted to respect their devotional practices and respect their faith in what they're doing, which is dedicating, and let me put it simply, dedicating their goodness on this day in the interests of those that they have lost. Now, this isn't necessarily a magic thing, it's bringing to mind those people in a good way. And the understanding and the deeply faithful believe that if those are not in the best realms for rebirth, their next rebirth will improve, and this is how it helps. But nevertheless, it's remembering those you've lost, and it's also doing so many other things. It's maranusati, it's contemplation of death, it's remembering that we can die at any time. I think seriously, if I had taken the medication this doctor had given me and done exactly as he suggested, then without any subsequent checks or any second opinions, I could have been quite ill to the extent of possibly dying myself within the last few days. Now, maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe not, but I've done a little bit of research and checked it out, and my understanding is you've got to be quite careful of these things. At least at the very least, I could have done some irreversible damage. But I'm fortunate that I spend most of my day in meditation and really getting to know my body, because the Buddha teaches us we can learn everything from our body. So I've continued with these tests also, even though I'll just say what the tests are. I've taken some blood sugar level tests. Yes, I went and got a little machine, or got someone to get me a little machine so I could check this. A very good one, so it's very accurate. And I'm now just out of interest before meditation, after meditation, throughout my day, because you often ask me about eating and food and the conversation. Some people have said, oh, we don't need to hear about food all of the time, don't keep asking that question. But it's useful, it's a very big part of everybody's lives. And I'm interested also, not in a research way, but as I had this little machine to see how our blood sugar levels go up and down, but not everyone else's. I can understand that because we continually are replacing the food. But when you are continually fasting, so not fasting to go for your blood test, which is what I couldn't explain to the doctor, but we fast as monks each and every day. I won't eat now, it's the morning, until tomorrow morning. And that is more fasting than is recommended for these tests. So I thought, well, maybe that could be causing some problems, albeit that would be the reverse of what was being suggested. And that I've also researched through monk channels, not these kind of channels, but people I know, to find how these figures are dramatically distorted when you are a monk. And I'd say to all GPs out there, if it's a forest monk, really listen to what they're saying. This is truly how they live, and it does affect these blood tests quite significantly, or can do quite significantly. And I'm really not criticizing anybody or trying to, you advise me, any GPs out there, how wrong I am, please, because I need to try and keep this vehicle for practice as healthy as possible. And I'm being very careful to do that and taking the advice I get. That being said, now I've lost where I'd got to. It turned out to be a good Christmas day, not a Christmas day, but a feast day for me. Very quiet, very peaceful. I had this wonderful trip for the lunch, and then today has been very much, I could reflect on today as being very much like how Boxing Day used to be for me in the West. That day where you see quite a few more people, like there's more people here on the beach, not to speak to, but I'm seeing them, and so many more people, being as it's Poya Day, have come to where I live and stay for, I've had my morning chanting at 6 a.m, then before the meal I had people coming for this merit sharing activity for the deceased, then after the meal an anumodana, which is saying great gratitude, and then after the meal I had another group of people coming for the same. And I understand, or I think if I remember rightly, there's another group coming tomorrow as well. But it doesn't matter, I don't need these things in my diary. I'm there and ready for these events as and when they come along. And I'm very grateful, not just to receive the dana they offer, toothbrushes, toothpastes and food and what I need, but to have their presence and have the opportunity for me to practice the devotional side of this religion, which is what it is in this country, for their benefit, but it also benefits me because I'm giving, aren't I? So whether I'm practicing those activities for myself each and every day when I'm alone is by the by, given the opportunity to assist and do my part as a clergy, as they call us here, a monk though, part of a sangha, I am able to give that knowledge of mine, that experience of mine, as my thanks, my gratitude, my anumodana, to assist them with their devotional practice and and sadha, faith in their religion. So it's very important and I enjoy it very much. And I just remembered what I was going to actually talk about, and yes, I remember. So somebody asked me a question, and it relates to this, that I mentioned and I did mention that I'd been a bhikkhu for 5 years. So fully ordained, not 5 years, 3 years. And now I've even lost count. I think it's that. But because Uvasa, after the rains, is the anniversary, not the date when you ordained. So it's not as simple as you might think. But anyway. And he said, but you also mentioned that we have to stay within the monastery where we were ordained, or at least where we are trained with our teacher for 5 years. 5 years. And you're quite correct, and I'm glad you asked the question so that I can give some clarification as to why that is. So, my duty, my responsibility, which is reciprocated, but I am reciprocally responsible to my Sangha still in India, my teacher and my Upajjhaya. My Upajjhaya is the senior monk a Mahatera whom ordained me, and then you have an Acharya who's your teacher, and then you have your Sangha who are your fellow bhikkhus whom you may have ordained at the same time with or are part of the same group. And this is your monastic family, and mine is in Bangalore, India, South India, and remains so. They give me permission to leave, to go on these travels to Thailand and then come back for the Vasa. In fact, they asked me to come back for the Vasa, and I said no, could I stay in Thailand? Then I changed my mind and said yes, I will. I was feeling a little homesick because they're my monastic family, so I do miss them. I've spent a very important, not so much the length of time, but since 2020, the beginning of, I've spent a very important part of my life with them, teaching me everything I need to know about being a bhikkhu for real, not just watching other monks and being a lay person, not just reading about it, but being it. So they're a very important part of my life, and they remain my family in that sense. And I'm very fortunate to be blessed with that support. It's that keeps my path straight and in line with the Dharma, and reminds me, which is why I always take heed and remember these Uposatha days, even when they double up as I do, because I know when they're celebrating or practicing Uposatha in India, I have certain functions I perform here being alone that we do in the Uposatha each month or twice a month also. So whatever I do on today's Poya day, I'll do tomorrow with my Sangha at the same time as them. They're in the same time zone in India, also with them in mind. And they kindly have given me permission. So I have to request from the Sangha, not just my teacher, the entire Sangha, permission to go on these trips, these exploits. Because I have been now, I'm in my 9th, 10th year of this practicing, or being on 8 precepts, let's say, so living both in and out of a monastery, but as a monk, but not ordained. As I've been in this form, in that sense, living quite strictly to the Vinaya for a long time, also because of my actual age in terms of bodily years, and the fact they know me very well from having grown up as a Samanera, a Kapya, an Anagarika, a Samanera, and then a Bhikkhu after Upasampada with them within their 4 walls of the monastery. They know me very well, probably better than I know myself, because they're experienced teachers in these matters. They give me permission to leave the monastery. Not to leave, but to go on these visits. Now, I originally had a plan. My plans are continually changing. This is anicca, this is life. And they are used to that. I've just, having decided that I'd like to stay here for much longer. It's very good for my practice. I'm developing so much more than I've been able to develop elsewhere, different aspects of the practice within this monastic life. The living as a monk here, so well supported by the people of Sri Lanka in this Buddhist country. They are very supportive and happy for me to stay. But I requested official permission from them and instructions to stay here, which they have gladly, I'm happy to say, they're more than happy are giving to me to say, yes, Dhammarakkhita, you stay there. If your practice is going well and you feel you're doing good, this is good for us also, so you stay there where you are. Maybe they don't want me back, but that's why I'm only 3 years and I'm out of the monastery. But this is quite rare. It is important to know when you leave the monastery within that 5 years, you may not be ready. You may still be battling with the kilesas. If you've come from lay life, ordinary lay life, just as a 5 precept lay Buddhist, you probably need to live for 5 years in the monastery before it's safe for you to leave. If you come from lay life as a strictly 8 precept, and only you know this, and only I know this, then you will find when you do leave the monastery, nothing's different. You're not so swayed, you're not easily diverted, your attention can be kept on the practice, sila, samadhi, panya, more easily. So it's very important. So it was a good question you asked. It's given me the opportunity to just clarify that. And it is just as it happens, I have contacted them recently, not only to ask for their permission to remain here for as long as is possible, or as is appropriate to do so, but also only this morning to ask my teacher, please, I'm rather confused about the chanting, remind me, and he was very graciously able to explain to me what I didn't quite understand and find the right bits in the chanting book. So this morning's programs went very much more smoothly than they would have without that assistance. And it's just a very simple example of why we need that Sangha behind us. So that's very different to say you've done 3 years, that's it, I've had enough of that, I'm going it alone. Because you can't do that. This is outside of the Vinaya. As a Navaka Bhikkhu, which is what I am, this is within your first 5 years, you take Nisaya, which is dependence. I'm dependent on my teacher, and you also accept that they are dependent on you. So if they were to say, right, it's your duty, you come back tomorrow, then you are obliged to do so, to help them, as they will always help you. It's a mutual support. After 5 years, then, with their permission, you are able to, so to speak, go it alone. Like a self-employed, you might understand it better in the West. Whereas at the moment, I'm still a corporate man. But I have no intention of being a self-employed monk. I'll remain a corporate monk because my Sangha, I only wish I could support them as much as they support me. It's fortunate they get considerable amount of support anyway, so they don't need the little I can offer, but the intention is there because they have made all this happen, and they have made it happen in a way that has perhaps made it much more conducive to my style of practice, which is different to their and in each monastery, especially large ones, there are varying differences there's all different in any monastery. There's different people, different monks and nuns, different bhikkhus, different bhikkhunis. We all practice differently and have our own strengths and weaknesses, and all do things differently. So you don't get everybody in the same mold to be exactly the same, but you all follow the same goal and the same Vinaya, same rule book. But they understand my practice of solitary practice, of meditation as a meditation monk, and my tendency to want to be in these kind of natural, wild environments. Although today that's not sounding wild with the flying motorised kite thing going above me. But I think you understand. So yes, so I remain dependent on my monastery, my Sangha, back in India, and with their permission I will remain here. And also, I mean, on that note, if there are Sri Lankans watching that want to ask me any questions by email about that, and also lend your support by asking me to stay here, I'd be very welcome. I would very much welcome those emails, because I say email because you may not want to put it in the comments, I understand, but my email address is englishbuddhistmonk@gmail.com, but if you can't remember that, and I've said it too quickly, englishbuddhistmonk@gmail.com, then you can find it in the description underneath this video. I think it's a link, you can possibly click it, I don't know, but it's just englishbuddhistmonk@gmail.com. I have had many wonderful, lovely emails from people here in Sri Lanka asking me to stay, inviting me even before I came here to come here and stay. But I haven't really been able to find them. I haven't looked very hard, but anything like that might help me. I can stay here anyway on a visa for tourists. I'm here on a tourist visa at the moment, but I would like to change that to a monk's visa, and the process is underway for that. But any additional support from Sri Lankan people would be very helpful. I can include your name and on my application, but that's some time ahead. I'm here until the end of April anyway on my tourist visa with no problem. And even after that, I can renew that, so it's not really an issue. But these things, cost a little bit of money. Visas, even renewing them each month, each few months or whatever it is, costs some money. And as a monk, not having money, they don't charge us for those visas. So that's the only difference. So I don't have any money. It's actually your money that goes on visas unnecessarily if I'm here on a tourist visa. So I'd rather change that around as soon as I can. I think have to go away and come back briefly, but just to change it because they don't convert them. But that won't be a problem either. And it's, as I say, it's a long way off. So I suppose a little bit of an appeal. I mean, I'm not actually appealing for any medical advice from you kind GPs out there, because they're looking after me very well in that respect here. And I'm not ill. I'm having a repair job done in a few weeks' time. But you have to be fit and ready and have all the blood tests to make sure you're up to surgery. And there was just a little bit of a difference of opinion in terms of some of those tests, but there's plenty of time for us to get that right in the interim period. I think that should suffice for today, and this will give me the opportunity to then look through some of the comments and questions. I've taken this couple of days, as I usually do at the weekend, but an extended extra day, maybe even two, I've lost count, of not using my smartphone. That's not 100% true. I use it because it has my chanting book on it. So I can see it more clearly with my in the dark with the candle. As you see, when morning puja it's quite dark, you can't see a normal book. So the screen lights up on here, so I can see it nice and clearly and read it clearly. I use my phone for my chanting book, and it's handy to carry it around. Plus I use 2 or 3 different chanting books in the same puja, so I can flick from one to the other without carrying things around. But I don't need to look at anything else. I can use that. In fact, I just don't want to look at anything else because all notifications are switched off on my phone. So I've used this few days to be phone free in that respect, other than the usual politenesses of Christmas Day to family and friends, Merry Christmas and back and this and that via WhatsApp. I've managed to not look at comments or read the emails, so I apologise if I've not got back to you, but I will do over the next 24 hours, be responding to comments again and looking at your emails, and hopefully in the next talk be able to talk about those comments and emails, and from my perspective, at least from this monk's point of view, maybe answer some of the questions that I know are waiting there for me to answer when I get back to doing that later on or tomorrow, and ready for the next talk. My little friend's come back, who sits at the end of this log whenever I make a talk. So he is part of the Kalyana Mita that watch these talks and videos, or she, because I wonder if I could, I'm sure when I get up he'll move. If not, I'll try and turn the camera around so you can see what on earth this crazy monk is talking about. But it's fascinating to watch this dear creature. All dear creatures. I've even developed a fondness for cockroaches, so I'm either going mad and crazy because I'm alone too much, and this is one of the reasons we should stay in our monastery for 5 years, to make sure we're not going to do that. But I think I've spent a long time, enough years now alone to know that it's not that. It's just when you have this opportunity in a place that's so supportive to practice metta, both from the receiving end and the giving end. When I say practice metta in the real sense, developing the quality of loving kindness within you through the loving kindness you receive and the loving kindness you can offer back, developing that quality within you, then all creatures, even cockroaches, do become endearing. I'm now going around turning them the right way up, because I can see that they don't last long. I have to use a soft broom to sweep them out of my room, but if they go over the step and roll over, I go outside and turn it up so that it can walk off okay. Otherwise it could die or get harmed. I'm not sure. I don't think they can get back up. It seems I didn't see one in the dark last night, and this morning it was laying on its back going wee, and I thought it wasn't wriggling. I thought, oh, it's dead cockroach. So I said to Balala, the cat, I said, I'll put it over there, and I turned it over, and I'm talking to the cat, and it ran away. So I've been doing this, turning them over, because I think they should have the chance to run away, even if they do come back at night. As far as I know, they're harmless, so what does it matter? On that silly note, on Boxing Day, on Poya Day, on the day before the Uposatha, on this full moon day, the 27th of December, in what remains of this wonderful year 2023, and I appreciate not wonderful for everyone in the world, but we can think of those with metta, with loving kindness, with karuna, with compassion, and those that have had a wonderful year with our appreciation that they've had happiness and joy, and this is mudita, a joy for others. And these qualities we develop go towards our own equanimity, and this equanimity, upekkha, is largely on the way towards enlightenment, and that is, after all, what you're trying to be, free from suffering in this lifetime. So many blessings to you and from me here, and thank you for watching. If there's something useful, please use it. If not, you can just let it go. and be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu. I'm thinking about if I can get up very quietly and show you my little friend. If I go along on my knees, oh, I nearly fell over then. So this is the little fellow that I talk about, who comes and sits on the end of this log with his arms out straight, with his head up, looking at me with one of his little eyes. Isn't he sweet? He's to your left. He's shaking his little leg, saying hello. Hello. Sabe Sata Sukhi Hotu.